Welcome to EPG Pathshala on the subject Social Medicine and Community Health. I am Professor C.P. Mishra, working in the Department of Community Medicine, Institute of Medical Sciences, Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi. I shall be discussing the module Lighting. This module refers to the paper Environmental Health. The module has been developed by a team comprising of myself as Principal Investigator, Dr. V.M. Gupta, ex-Professor and Head, Department of Community Medicine, Institute of Medical Sciences, Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi, as Paper Coordinator. The module has been written by Dr. Milli Misra, Assistant Professor, Department of Community Medicine, Institute of Medical Sciences, Barabanki, Uttar Pradesh, and the content has been reviewed by Dr. G. Tandon, ex-Professor and Head, Department of Community Medicine, Institute of Medical Sciences, Banaras Hindu University. The learning objectives that has been set for this module is that after going through this module, we should be able to understand what is the meaning of good lighting and factors affecting it, natural light and artificial light, different methods of measurement of light, methods of artificial illuminations, and biological effect of light. So basically the module confines to 5 learning objectives. Light has an immense importance in the life of every human being, and not only human being, every living organism on this planet. Light is a source of energy for plants. Light in physics refers mainly to the electromagnetic radiation of any wavelength, visible or invisible. The word usually means visible light, that is visible to human naked eye and is particularly responsible for sight. And as a public health expert, we are more interested that everybody in our country should have lighting facility, and therefore electrification in city areas and rural areas has been the top priority of the government. In spite of that, the lighting arrangements in many parts of the country is not up to the mark. The reasons may be many. In the daytime even, many houses, they don't have windows, doors are closed, and within the room, light is not adequate, and many persons may not be able to read with the natural light. Since the natural light is absent, and artificial light facilities are minimum. Visible light is a narrow band of electromagnetic radiation having wavelengths of 380 to 790 nanometers. The visible spectrum occupies between the infrared and ultraviolet radiation. Sun is the main source of natural light to the earth. Though fire was used as a source of light in ancient India era, and in recent days, with advancement of science, electric light and power sources are mainly used as the source of artificial light. But many times, lamps lighted by kerosene oil or even some other devices have been used in the past as a light source. According to physics, gamma rays, X-rays, radio waves are also counted as light. Visible light, as of all other lights, is emitted as photons and exhibits properties of both particles and waves. The spectrum of visible light, we can see that the visible spectrum varies from 400 to 700 wavelengths, and the colors are almost same as appears in the WebGear. Now, once after discussing that what is light in terms of its physical properties, and now I would like to discuss what are the factors that affect good lighting. For efficient vision, there should be a mandate for good lighting, otherwise visual apparatus will be under strain. So our eyes will be, if there is less lighting, our eyes will be under strain and there will be many problems. Factors are essential for good visions are sufficiency of light, uniform distribution of light, absence of glare, absence of soft shadows, and steadiness. Each and every factor, if the light is not sufficient, eyes will be strained. If the distribution is not uniform, eye will be under strain. If there is a glare, people will be not able to see optimally, and there should not be soft shadows as we find in laser beams and others, because that will be irritating. And if the light source is fluctuating, there will be a problem. So steadiness of light is important, and also the color of light also has effect on our eyes, and also the surrounding objects, because most of the light we get from the main source, it comes and it gets reflected, and those color of the surroundings and surroundings have a strong influence on good lighting. So sufficiency, light should be sufficient enough so that the eyes can be easily discern between the objects and surrounding without causing strain. Minimum light needed for satisfactory vision is an illumination of 15 to 20 foot candles. 1 foot candle is equal to 10.76 lux. Requirement of illumination varies from place to place. 5 foot candles in stairways, 100 foot candles in industries. Then distribution of light should be proper. Proper dispersal of light without the production of shadows is necessary and of utmost importance for efficient vision. If there exists a contrast difference in light, it will cause strain of the eyes and visual acuity is adversely affected. Therefore, distribution of light should be uniform, equal in intensity, and evenly distributed over the whole field of the work. Absence of glare, as I said, excessive contrast is called glare, and glare is said to be direct when light is from source and it is reflected when reflected from a polished surface. Glare causes annoyance, and I cannot tolerate glare because it causes acute discomfort and reduces critical vision. Examples of glare are the automobile headlights at night, and that causes a tremendous big problem in the persons who are coming from the outside, from the opposite side, and driving vehicles. Absence of soft shadows. Shadows cause confusion to the eye and therefore should not be present in the field of vision. Slight shadows are inevitable, but sharp and contrasting shadows are disturbing. Steadiness of light is important. Light source should be constant. If there is a flickering, the source is moving from here and there, then it may cause problem. It should not flicker because flickering causes eye strain and may lead to accidents. Color of light, if the intensity is adequate, the color of light is not very important. The artificial light should be equal to in color as of the daylight color, because daylight color is more soothing to the eyes. Surroundings play a very important role. High levels of illumination will be required when there is a little color contrast as black object in dark background. Contrasting colors are often used to prevent accidents, culverts, bridges. Color schemes in rooms are important for efficient vision. Reflection factors: roofs 80%, walls 50 to 60%, furniture 30 to 40%, floors 15 to 20%. So that much the light from the source and the reflection. So generally the roof should be white and floors should be must have some light color, and walls may be also light color. Now coming to the third important component of light, the measurement of light can be done. Light containing all visible waves and is perceived as white. There are 4 measures used for measurement of light. Luminous intensity, which is the power of the light source considered as a point radiating in all directions. This is measured at candela or candle power. So luminous intensity is synonym to the power of a light source, and it refers to light radiating in all directions and measured in terms of candela or candle power. Luminous flux, it refers to flow of light related to a unit of solid angle measured in lumen. Illumination or illuminance, amount of light reaching a surface measured in lux per unit area, and brightness or luminance, amount of light reflected from the surface measured in Lambert's unit. So there are these four important units are luminous intensity, luminous flux, illumination or illuminance, and brightness or luminance. And brightness depends on the amount of light that is reflected from surface. Natural lighting is derived partly from the visible sky and partly from the reflection, but maximum amount contributed by reflection from the light colored objects. So whatever natural light we get, the sun is the ultimate source, and whatever light comes there, that gets reflected from the light colored objects. Efficient utilization mandates for a proper town planning, careful designing building, location and orientation of buildings, and relationship between buildings for getting adequate amount of natural lighting. Natural lighting also depends upon the time of the day, season, weather, and atmospheric pollution. So season, particularly in the winter months, many times the sun is not there visible. Weather also affects it, and sometimes atmospheric pollution may also affect the quality of light. Natural light is accompanied by radiant heat, so it is advisable to exclude radiant heat while admitting daylight. So just now we have discussed what is the importance of physical environment, particularly in terms of light, in the life of a human being. And we have also discussed what are the factors that influence adequate or good lighting. We have also discussed just now that how the light can be measured in terms of deciding whether it is adequate or not. Now we are moving to the third part, that is, what are the principles for improving daylight illumination. The first and foremost principle refers to orientation. It plays a major role in illumination of a house or a building. Illumination is not actually constant in the direction of the east and west side of a building. Also, the heating is much experienced in the eastern side of a building rather than on western side. So, sun is the principal source of light, and if the sun rays falls directly facing the particular building, particularly in the morning east, so there may be much heating experience also in that particular side. So, improvement of daylight illumination must take into consideration the orientation of the building as a whole. Therefore, it is advisable that orientation of the building should be north-south for proper illumination. But many times, the building constructed in India, it depends on how the land is obtained, and second is even the many mythological practices in construction of buildings, and that may also affect lighting. The second important component is removal of obstructions. In many buildings, in many places, natural light is not obtained because of obstructions. Even if the sun is directly falling on the building, but there is no windows, doors are closed, and therefore natural light is all not available in the daytime. In the night time, the power supply is jeopardized, electricity supply is not there, and in many rural villages, still the traditional sources of light do exist, where kerosene oil is used. Many times people use even other sources for illuminating their house, and therefore most of the time you'll find that in rural areas there is a complete darkness. If the light is, Government of India is taking a lot of efforts in this direction, so there should be a proper guidelines for construction of houses in rural area and urban area. There should windows, doors, availability should be there. In rural areas, many times because of security reasons, windows are not made in many houses. So this creates a problem of getting adequate light. But every attempt should be made for removal of obstructions, because effective improvement in the illumination is achieved by removing the obstructions causing agent wholly or partially. It provides the most important single measure to improve lighting. Windows, proper planning of windows, as I said just now, can improve the lighting in a room. In modern practice, window area is correlated to the purpose of room it intended to serve, and the dictum is 10% of the floor area should be in the form of windows. Narrow windows in turn increases the penetration of light, and the border windows increases the diffusion of light. The basic difference between narrow windows and border windows is narrow windows increases the penetration of light, and border windows increases the diffusion of light. The interior of the rooms, the ceiling should be set white because it reflects maximum light, 80%. The upper portion of the walls light tinged and the lower portion somewhat darker, so as to obtain the full benefit of the natural illumination. Measurement of daylight. Daylight factor. It is used as a measurement of daylight, as the intensity of illumination will vary from moment to moment in the day, because there is a lot of variation in the light throughout the day, and therefore daylight factor should be calculated, and because intensity of illumination cannot be fixed at every moment. It is a ratio of illumination at a given point to the illumination at a point exposed simultaneously to the whole hemisphere of the sky, taken as 500 foot candles, excluding direct sunlight. So, daylight factor can be used as an important measure of deciding adequacy of light. The daylight factor may be summarized as follows. Daylight factor is equal to instantaneous illumination in indoors divided by simultaneously occurring illumination outdoors into 100. So, numerator is instantaneous illumination indoors, and denominator is simultaneously occurring illumination outdoors multiplied by 100. The daylight factor is determined by a daylight factor meter. It is recommended that the daylight factor in living rooms should be at least 8% and in kitchens about 10%. So this is often not taken into account, and there is a need to take into cognizance that there should be sufficient light in the living rooms as well as in kitchens, and daylight factor can be taken into consideration for this purpose. Artificial lighting. Daylight should be supplemented by artificial lighting, as the daylight may not be sufficient throughout the day. So, daylight factor, optimum daylight factor cannot be obtained throughout the day, because the natural light varies from morning to evening, or there is much of fluctuations. And so in order to maintain the daylight factor, there is a need for artificial lighting, and artificial lighting should be as close as possible to daylight in composition. So the purpose of giving artificial lighting is to supplement the deficit what a natural lighting or day factor would have been. Different systems of artificial lighting exist. One is direct lighting, when 99 to 100% of the light is projected directly towards the working area. Then it is called as direct lighting. It should not fall into the eyes, because if it falls in the eyes, there will be glare, the eyes will be closed, and working will be affected. Semi-direct, when 10 to 40% of the light is projected towards the ceiling and then reflected back. Indirect, in this case, 90 to 100% of light is projected towards the ceiling and walls. So, the artificial lighting system, direct lighting, semi-direct. In direct lighting, 90% of light is projected directly in the working area. In semi-direct, 10 to 40% of light is projected towards the ceiling and then reflected back. And in direct, in this case, 90 to 100% of light is projected towards the ceiling and walls. Direct light is distributed equally, direct and indirect. Methods of artificial illumination are: filament lamps is one. Tungsten filament upon heating by electric current emits light. The hotter filaments produce a bluer light. Dust accumulation on the bulbs reduces the illumination by 30 to 40%. People need to be educated about this. Many times the illumination decreases just because of the presence of dust on the outside of the bulbs and also in tube lights. Then second type of is fluorescent lamps. The light emitted stimulates natural light by fluorescent lamp. The lamp consists of a glass tube filled with mercury vapor and an electrode fitted at the each inside is coated with fluorescent chemicals, which absorb practically all of the ultraviolet radiation and remit the radiation of visible range only. So fluorescent lamps are better than filament lamp because they emit the light, the radiation in the visible range only. Light emitting diode are there. These have better lifespan than the incandescent lamp and also superior than the fluorescent lamps. Emission of energy from the lamps. Then filament light 5%, heat 95%, fluorescent 21% light and 79% heat. So by this information we can understand that why fluorescent lamps are better than filament lamps. There is less heating, there is much more light, and fluorescent tube lights just pass the light with the visible range only. Now, after discussing this part, then we will discuss the lighting standards. Fixing a standard of light is much confusing because of the adaptability of the eye. The visual efficiency increases with the increase of illumination, but the curve flattens out at higher levels. Thumb rule is that the illumination level should be 30 times higher than the level at which the task can just be done. The eye responds to a range of illumination ranging from 0.1 lux, that is full moonlight, to 100,000 lux bright sunshine. So there is a huge variation in the illumination, and eye responds differently in different illuminations. For practical point of view, and for various activities, the following values in lux have been suggested by the Illuminating Engineer Society. Visual task, casual reading, illumination 100, general office work 400, fine assembly 900, and very severe task 1300 to 2000, and watchmaking 2000 to 3000. Now, after discussing the different sources of light, there are three other important things which you may consider. One is what is known as global illumination. There is a large source of light, what is known as key light source, and when this light from the key light source comes to and it gets reflected from the bodies and it scatters in the entire area, so that is called global illumination. Then there is a phenomenon known as subsurfacing surface scattering. Semi-transparent light passes through the semi-transparent objects and emits glow. Then there is a term called finer weather. It means that if the light source is colored, then it is observed that when this light goes to different objects, the objects also take the same color. But what happens that the sources which are close to the main source, then nearby objects have much more closer color as the parent source has. So this is known as finer surface. Now, lastly, we would like to discuss what are the biological effects of light. In recent days, much attention has been focused on biological effects of light. Particularly, we know that in children, there is a physiological jaundice, but in many children we will find cases of hyperbilirubinemia. And premature infants with hyperbilirubinemia, in vitro degradation of bilirubin is now being used as a therapeutic measure in premature infants. And this has emerged as a life-saving device. Other biological effects of light are effect on biological rhythms of body temperature and physical activity, stimulation of melanin synthesis, and activation of precursors of vitamin D, adrenocortical secretion, and also food consumption. So light has a very tremendous effect on many physiological processes, and inadequate or adequate light and excessive light. So inadequate and excessive light both have harmful effect on eyes that cause eye strain, and so we have to take into cognizance the biological effect of light, and lighting should not be considered only as a physical part of only physical health. It has a tremendous effect on our health and survival, and lighting has a different meaning in our mythology also, that everybody must have exposure to light in terms of physical as mental and spiritual dimensions as well. Thank you very much for visiting EPG Pulse.